Good morning and welcome to Legally Speaking with attorney Antoinette Osbourne. This program is for information purposes only. If you need legal advice, you can contact me, Antoinette Osbourne, at 718-502-9137. That's 718-502-9137. The office focuses on divorce, immigration, bankruptcy, real estate, and estate matters. We also do eviction proceedings. There is a second office in Jamaica, West Indies, that focuses on legal representation if you are seeking to buy or sell property, or if you are looking to wrap up an estate. If you have a question this morning, you can pose it in the live chat or you can text it to 718-502-9137. You can also call in to the program by calling the same number, 718-502-9137. So this morning I wanted to go over what a caller had questioned last week concerning her. I can't recall if she said it was her fiance or it was her husband, with regards to the fact that he was convicted for manslaughter for his child as a result of the child drowning in the bathtub. Now, initially, I had stated that he may have been barred by the Adam Walsh Act, and this is not the case. The Adam Walsh Act specifically, it does involve minors, but it's in regards to sexual offenses involving minors. And it's so sad that we have to protect our children in these extreme manner because you have people who just I don't even know how to describe them. I just think if you have lost your mind and if you go out and you actually touch a child in a sexual manner, for me personally, I think you're sick. But that's just my personal opinion. I cannot see what grown folks have to, what sort of enjoyment grown folks get out of in any form of sexual exploitation of children. And this is such a serious bar to a petitioner to getting your relative petition approved, in that they really are trying to protect you as the intending immigrant in the event that the person that you are involved in has a history of sexual exploitation of children. So I just wanted to focus briefly this morning as to what is the intended purpose of this statute, right? And as I had stated last week, this came about anyone who had watched, and I'm not sure if it's still on, America's Most Wanted, right, with John Walsh. His child, unfortunately, had disappeared from the mall, and I think they found him. That little boy was found 2 weeks later, decapitated, head gone. Simple, you know. And I'm going to encourage parents because I see this all the time. Parents are walking with their children. The children is at a distance either far behind them or they are just at a distance completely out of their reach in front of them. And I just can't understand how you can have your children at a distance from you where if anyone is going to snatch them, there's nothing really you can do because you are not within close proximity. And I saw this gentleman did something the other day, and I think any father who, where they are with their daughter, especially in these times, we have to be realistic. The bathrooms are becoming gender neutral. And I saw this gentleman. He was taking his daughter wanted to use the bathroom, and he actually, and what you have to do as men, if you are going into a female bathroom and you're taking in your daughter, I think you should announce, because women who are in the bathroom are just going to be terrified. And especially as Black people in this country and or Black men, there is a fear, right? So, especially as a Black man going into a bathroom and you're taking in your daughter into the female bathroom, I think you should announce that daughter coming in, that daughter coming in. So the women in the bathroom will realize that you are a man taking in your daughter. And I think just to protect yourself, because we can see what is happening with our men in this country, I think you should have your phone not showing the bathroom but on yourself, and that is to protect you, right? So you're walking your daughter in the female bathroom because you cannot let your daughter go into the bathroom by herself in these times. And it is so good that man did, because when he did, who was in the bathroom? There was a grown man. He's coming in and he's like, you know what, let me go in with her. And he's coming in, and what is happening was there was a grown man in the stall, and he said to the man, you know, this is a female bathroom, right? And the man is there smirking. Things like that, I personally I don't find funny. And this is where I'm going to encourage you. Just be vigilant when it comes to your children. We're living in serious times. And I think what a lot of stores do now, where there is an alert that a child is missing, some stores will actually lock all exits. It's very important, right? Because you're not getting away with that child. And it's so sad that this happened to, Mr. Walsh's child, but he was vigilant and a statute was created. It, however, has serious immigration ramifications for US or green card holder petitioners who are petitioning for their their immediate family relatives, right? So what is happening is when you file this petition and you have, and let's go into the crimes that will trigger this, because it really does by its very nature involve a sexual exploitation of children. And we are in fact looking at an offense which involves kidnapping of a child, unless, of course, you are the parent. Because, as you know, anyone who has been to family court, it is a war zone between mom and dad. Let's get real. That court is a battlefield between the parents, right? So you have some parents who they just can't deal with the injustice that they deem an injustice by the other parent, and they just take the child. But you will not be barred if it's kidnapping of your own child under the Adam Walsh Act. We're also looking at offenses involving imprisonment, of course, unless this involves your child. So if you are filing a petition for someone, a family based petition, and the false imprisonment involved your child, you're not going to be barred by this statute. We have to look at, and this just use of a minor in to perform sexual conduct. This just irks me. I'm I I I don't know how, as a grown person, you know, I specifically remember I had a client and he was talking to this girl, it was getting serious. But of course there would be an immigration application that would have needed to be made for him. And he's talking to the girl, and I just googled the girl's name, and of course she had a history where there was some sort of sexual violence involving a 13-year-old child. I don't, and it's to be even in that position. And this is where you have to protect yourself, because I do understand that people will misrepresent things. I've had landlords who have told me that their tenants' boyfriend called them and kind of warned them. And the reason why the boyfriend called the landlord, because he was a man too. And what his tenant was planning to do was to create a false alarm that he had raped her. So he called the landlord and he warned him, be very careful, because he didn't think it's funny. And this is where we do understand that sometimes you can find it yourself in circumstances where people have completely perjured themselves on you. But I'm going to encourage you, and this is where sometimes you'll see men are very hesitant to date women with children or to be left alone with the person they're dating children. And they get into like protective mode because they don't want to be in such a position, right? Um, Solicitation to practice prostitution. So, if you are in fact looking to solicit a child to engage in prostitution, you have to be like the lowest uh, human being there is. I'm sorry, you have to be like the scum of the earth. But this is a society that we live in where we have, in fact, minors who are being trafficked sexually. And I just want to just encourage you, protect your children. We are living in a society now where all hell has broken loose. I think we are at the pit of the moral barrel. I just sincerely believe that people have lost their way, but you have to take control of your own life in whatever you're doing. But try not to engage in these sort of acts involving minors, right? We look at video voyeurism. That's another, if you get convicted of that involving a child, right? Yeah, and you look later on to file a family petition for someone, you're going to face this bar, right? Once you put in a family petition and you have a conviction involving a sexual offense with a minor, minor is someone who is under 18 years old. You have a conviction involving a case of a sexual nature involving a minor, going to be subject to this bar. And I'm going to tell you, this is not an easy waiver to get, right? All right. Another thing is possession, production, or distribution of child pornography. I don't see, if you're in possession of this, I can't see what's going to be your excuse. I remember my client came to me, his daughter was, I think it was the grandmother she was staying with, and that woman beat that child, and there were like serious marks over the child's body. And he took pictures, but the child was naked at the time. And I was like, get rid of those pictures. It falls into the wrong hands. You just never know, and people who, especially people who are dating and you're taking these pictures, you have to be careful how these pictures can in fact come back and haunt you. Yeah. So just be careful, right? Um, just a thought of someone possessing child pornography. Yeah, mm. All right, so any form of criminal sexual conduct involving a minor, if you're convicted of this, yeah, you're going to face this bar. This bar is an uphill battle, and not a lot of the applications get approved. I think anyone who is dating with the intent to marry, this is someone you are seeking to develop a relationship that would lead to a long term situation. I really think or even if it's short term. I think there are certain things that you should do, and this is not just with regards to the men. I think the women should do it. New York has a sex offender registry. I think you should plug the person's name in. If you're dating someone, you should get an address history, because you should be checking that registry. There are certain things, if you are looking to move on with someone, there are certain things that you should do in order to protect yourself. And I really think you should make use. And this is not just in an immigration context. You really need, who are you living beside? Especially when you have kids and you're next door to someone who has a history involving a violent crime. This allows you to see how it is. Someone has a violent criminal sexual history against minors, and this is your neighbor. You should put in protective measures to protect your child. I'm sorry. This is the reality. We're living in a big city. Yeah, it is a melting pot for everyone. However, people's belief system varies. And what you may believe as morally correct may not be deemed as incorrect for somebody else. So I can't encourage you enough. Protect your children. Yeah. And you have to protect yourself. If you have an immigration, family based immigration application to make, even if you are filing for your own kids and they're adults, once this history comes into play, yeah, I'll never forget, I had a client who he got hit with this, and this happened upstate, and they wanted newspaper articles, but it was so good that I could find in the record that the alleged victim was like 19 years old. Yeah. So didn't fit the criteria that Adam Walsh does not hold. This statute is surrounded by the age of the victim. So once that person is over 18, that person is not a minor, you're not blocked with this. This is a serious bar. I don't want you to take it lightly. If you have an immigration application that you are going to file, and it is a family based application, you must know the criminal history. And I understand people lie, yeah? But you must know the criminal history. And when this is in fact triggered, what happens is you see the petitioner being requested. So the petitioner is in the family base, the US citizen or the green card holder. When you see that petitioner being sent for fingerprinting, something is up. And more likely than not, this is a person who was engaged in criminal activity involving sexual exploitation of a child. So I'm just giving you some tips this morning, whether it is for yourself or a friend who has an application that they are going to make, that you know that this is something that you have to look out for. Hold on a second. Nicola just reached out. All right. So I'm not sure if it is that you are, in fact, able to see me, Nicola, because Nicola sent me a screen as if the live is not working. All right. So good morning, Madge, Renee, June, and Michelle. I truly hope that we are still live. Nicola, please let me know if we are still live. All right. So you have to, in fact, be able to determine whether or not the person who you're seeing the person who is going to be making an application for you, whether or not they have a criminal conviction, it affects your application if the person has a conviction involving sexual exploitation of a minor. Right? Morning, Tracy. All right. So, if the US citizen has been convicted of a crime involving the sexual exploitation of a minor, this stands to be a bar to your application and you're going to need a waiver. If the person who is filing for you is a green card holder, that person often will get referred to ICE for removal proceedings, right? Extremely important. I know for me, when I have clients who are coming in, I will ask the both of them, not just the immigrant. I have to ask the US citizen whether or not they have been ever arrested, because the ramifications for them is if he or she has been convicted of an offense involving the sexual exploitation of a minor, then this is going to be a hurdle in their application, right? So the Department of Homeland Security does have a discretion where, if it is that the petitioner has been convicted, that they can still approve it if they determine that the person does not pose a risk, right? That US citizen or the green card holder does not pose a risk to the intending immigrant. But I will tell you this, their discretion is mostly exercised in favor of a no, as opposed to being exercised in favor of a yes. So it's tough. And the conviction does not only involve the person who does the act, if it is that you have been convicted on a conspiracy charge to do one of these offenses or an attempt charge, you will be blocked. And this is how serious this is, right? Now, I'll tell you what my experience is. I can't speak to anyone else's, but my experience is simply this: when you have someone who has been convicted of an offense, I want you to understand that immigration is not going to look behind your conviction to state that, oh, possibly there is some innocence. And what is happening is I will have people who will come with a lot of explanations. Oh, the person is lying. That was your opportunity whilst the charges were pending. That was your opportunity to seek an adjudication of innocence. And especially with these crimes, you will often see the petitioner coming to say, oh, the person was lying on them. This is not true. They didn't touch the child in this way. Immigration is not going to look past your conviction. Your story that this is not how it happened, you should have used the opportunity when you were in criminal court to get a not guilty verdict. Yeah? Get the charges dismissed against you. The fact that you have a conviction, immigration is not going to go past that, right? So, just tuning in, you are listening to Legally Speaking with attorney Antoinette Osbourne. If you have a question this morning, you can post it in the live or you could call in at 718-502-9137. You can also text your question to 718-502-9137. And to make an appointment during the week, it's the same number, 718-502-9137. Don't forget, on Sundays at 11 o'clock, we are on Future FM, where we do our community-based program, Fumi's Village. you can go to futurefm.net, or you can download on the TuneIn app and search for Future FM. It is a calling program. It is a community-based program where we are focused on reclaiming the family. It's a focus on the traditional family. We are trying to save relationships that just does not have to be broken, right? Because I find as a community, we are in fact broken. So it's for the village, the community to come together and just try to bring forth some form of cohesiveness where we can bring stability to the family unit and we can have children being raised in a stable family unit. We're just tired of these broken homes. Yeah. All right. Now, for people who are convicted, I have nothing to tell you other than immigration is not going to go past your disposition. Yeah. And for anyone who is an immigrant and you have been arrested, one of the calls that you should make before entering a plea, yeah, is to your immigration attorney, because this controls your life here. And you have people who are stuck in this country for years and they can't move because, unfortunately, they have these immigration consequences. When it comes to the 90s and 80s, it's a lot of drug convictions. Yeah. I swear it's like everybody was getting arrested in the 90s and the 80s for drug offenses. And this has serious consequences. And people believe the fact that marijuana has become quote unquote acceptable for a lot of states. They're just under the impression that it is in fact legal. Marijuana is not legal for the federal government. It is still under controlled substance offense list. As a result of which, if you have been convicted for an offense other than one involving one single act of possession of 30 grams or less of marijuana, you're not going to get that green card. Yeah? For immigration purposes, this still stands. And this is what I want people to, in fact, understand, because people are just so liberal with this. And if you are an immigrant, this should not be your position where you need a green card. No, it shouldn't. All right. So if you are subject to this bar, then of course the burden is on you to prove that you are not going to be a harm to your intended immigrant. And this is a uphill battle. I don't want you to take it lightly. This is in fact not the easiest thing to prove, right? All right. Now, we're going to move from the Adam Walsh Act, and I just want to speak about certain things. Where it is that you have filed a petition for someone, I'm going to encourage you, because people will argue and they get back together. Yeah. And this is why it's so important that you have to have a cool down period, right? They get angry and then they will call the office. Oh, stop the petition, stop the petition. And you have to guide them. If you make me withdraw this petition and you get back together, and USCIS, if they either acknowledge it, so that's the end of the case, or if they don't acknowledge it and then you get called in for an interview, because you and the person, because it's now part of the record, and you and the person get back together. Because I find this is not something I engage in my personal life. A breakup is a breakup. But people will break up and they will get back together. And then you're now before immigration. And of course, they're going to smell a rat. And now you have the added burden to explain why there was discord in your relationship. And if it is not satisfactory, because people sign off on things such as, oh, that person, they're using me for a green card, and the only thing that they want is the green card. And you create this record. Yeah? And what happens is, if you don't get back together, no, the other person is facing the whole hurdle of possible marriage fraud, determination. That's not a joke. And I had a client, she's hurriedly calling me down. Oh, stop it, stop the petition. And I sent her a message. Be sure, because I know she's like a little hothead. You have to be sure that you know what you're doing. Because if you get back with this guy and you're refiling again, you're making your case harder. People will argue. It's just a human nature. Nothing is going to be perfect. You're going to have your discord, but you really have to think hard whether or not you're going to stop someone's petition. And then you get back together. And now you have this additional burden where you go to your interview, probably the officer doesn't believe your reason. Then you end up in a Stokes. And not everybody will pass a Stokes interview. And then you fail the Stokes. It just, I want you to, before you go and you decide you're withdrawing these petitions, you're placing these allegations on the record, these things form part of the record. And this is something that I want you to be very cognizant of. Yeah? Because people like to break up and they're making up. Yet you're making a case that was, by the history of your relationship, approvable. You're moving it closer to a denial. Be very careful as to what you're doing. All right. We do have times where we have records which are unavailable, whether it is your criminal record for some people, it is other documentation, it's just not available. You have to ensure, especially when it's a document which is needed from a government entity, you have to get documentation from that government entity as to why is it that record is no longer available. And one of the hardest things is when you go to these courts, the clerks do not want to give you any documentation, yeah, that the record is not available. But this does not help you. And it is a complete nightmare between getting something from the clerk that says that this document is not available, but the burden lies on the immigrants. Yeah. For records such as, military records, it's easy they'll still ask you for it. But you better believe they can reach out because they're federal agencies as well. They will reach out. And this is where, if people are tampering with documents, you have to understand federal agencies cooperate with law enforcement, period. Federal agencies cooperate with other federal agencies. So if it is that they need information from Social Security, you will not provide the information. They will go and they will get the information from Social Security. Be very careful how you are, in fact, using these. No one should be looking to use a fake driver's license now, where most states are, in fact, providing you with the opportunity to get a driver's license. New York did this from 2020. 20. I have clients who are driving on out-of-state license. They're possibly driving on the license from their home country. No, go and get your New York license, right? Because especially you're driving with these out-of-state license, some of you will be committing insurance fraud because you don't live there. You do not live at that address. And what is happening is, regardless of the documentation that you sent in, immigration also reaches out and do their own address history check on your petitioner. Be very careful what you're doing. Yeah? All right. This is a problem that I'm going to address this morning with the birth certificates, because I find this happens, well, I find it happens a lot with Jamaica. There is a delay in registration. I've seen birth certificates issued where there's no mother or father listed. That's just amazing to me. How is this possible? The birth certificate is a documentation that proves you when you're born, who are your parents? Yeah. For the father, that's suspect because not all of you are the child's father. But when you are delaying in the registration, that in itself is a fraud trigger. And I find fathers are coming on birth certificates where the children are adults. That makes absolutely no sense to me, right? Coming on when the children are 17, in their 20s, in their 30s. And when is it that they know they have to add their name? When they're filing immigration papers. Immigration should not be the determining factor as to when your name gets added on the birth certificate, because that's also a fraud trigger for them. What is it when look at the timing, look at the timing as to when that parent name is being added, right? Immigration will take into account the circumstances as to what was going on in the country at the time. Probably you are in a state of war. So there's going to be a delay in getting you registered. You have a reasonable excuse as to why is it that you were not registered on time. That's acceptable, right? The length of the time between the birth and registration, you have people being registered 2-3 years after, 20, 30, 40 years after. That's a fraud trigger, right? The reason you give for delay is very important. If your reason don't make sense, or it's really urging more questions than answers, you may get a denial. Yeah. For those of you who are not able to get your birth certificate record, there are secondary means, and we'll get into that, as to what is it that you can prove that you are actually born on this day, and this is your parent, right? There has to be some form of independent corroboration concerning the relationship. So it can't just be the father saying, I am the father. This is where, and I would not encourage anyone to hide their children, because you're going to need people to basically provide that support to you, to say that that child was born to you as a parent, and they know as to the timing of the child's birth. So if it is that you're going to hide this child, and this often occurs where the party is married and they don't want to break up their household. So in order to protect their marriage, this child remains a secret. Yeah. And when you need documents from people, unless that person is ready to perjure themselves. A lot of people were not aware of this child, and you hiding this child is of no benefit to you, especially if your name is not on the birth certificate. And later on, you're going to have to do an immigration application, right? The reason for your delay is absolutely so important. So let's look at things now that you can do to actually prove that this is your child. A DNA test is good, but if you have a DNA test and you can't prove involvement in that child's life in their formative years, regardless that that DNA test says you are the father, that case is going to get denied. You must be able to prove social, economic involvement in that child's life. Photographs are important. And people will come to me with this cute thing, oh, I don't take pictures. A picture speaks 1,000 words. You having pictures where the child was 4 or 5 and you're at a birthday party for the child, right? You're going to that child's graduation. I remember my father was at every event for us for school, and in getting brethren come who had a camera to take pictures. That's so important. Yeah, you're creating memories, you're creating a stamp in your life story, something that you can look back at. Very important. Let's look at correspondence between you and the child calling you daddy. Let's look at the school records of the child, in that you were registered when the child was in kindergarten. You were noted as the father on the daycare record. So important here and anywhere else where the mom took you to family court and she was seeking child support. That document saved one of my clients. Yeah? All right. People who are giving you affidavits concerning the birth of the child, I'm going to encourage you to use your relatives. Your mother is very important. And to me, I believe your mother is the biggest DNA detector. Yeah? It's nothing like your own mother, that she can look at the child and she can say, this is not your child. And often she's right. But for men who are, especially when you're not married to the women, it's not that I'm saying that the married women are more faithful, but the law just presumes that in your marriage, you're not going to be a whore and you're not going to be giving it away to everybody. They're presuming you're going to be faithful in your marriage. Yeah. All right. So just tuning in, we are at the end of the program. You've been listening to Legally Speaking with attorney Antoinette Osbourne. To make an appointment during the week, you can call 718-502-9137. Don't forget to join us at 11 o'clock on Future FM, where we will have Fumi's Village. We are going to be engaging in our community-based program. Have a wonderful Sunday and take care.